Abducted, violated, and murdered. That is what happened to Mandy Stavik of Acme, Washington in 1989. She was just 18 years old. The case remained unsolved for the next 3 decades, and it seemed like it would stay that way. That was until locals from the community of Acme came together to bring closure to the cold case. What happened to Mandy? How was her case solved? And who was the murderer? Stay tuned to this video if you want to learn more about the case. It was a chilly day on November 24th, 1989. Mandy set out around 1:50 p.m. for her usual jog. It was a routine that the vibrant 18-year-old had followed countless times before, always accompanied by her mother, Mandy Stavik, who usually biked alongside her. However, on this day, Mandy was only accompanied by their German Shepherd, Kyra. As the hours ticked by, Mother's worry grew. Kyra returned home alone, without Mandy by her side. Panic set in as the family and community searched tirelessly for the young woman. But it was 3 days later that the grim discovery was made. Mandy's nude body was found on the South Fork of the Nooksack River. According to authorities, she was physically violated and then drowned. The small town of Acme was shocked, their sense of security shattered by the brutality of Mandy's murder. The people couldn't help but think there was a murderer among them. The investigation that followed was grueling. Ron Peterson was an experienced investigator with the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office when he was assigned to the Mandy Stavik case. Peterson was determined to bring her killer to justice. As he combed the area where Mandy's body was found, he noted no signs of struggle. The water was shallow, and Mandy was a strong swimmer. It was clear that someone had placed her in the river, likely after she was unconscious. The medical examiner's report provided more clues. The injury at the top of Mandy's head indicated she may have been knocked out before being placed in the water. Peterson knew this was a crucial piece of evidence that could lead to a breakthrough in the case. At the time, DNA used in forensics was still in its infancy and was rarely used by investigators. But as luck would have it, Peterson had just completed his training at the FBI Academy in Quantico, where he learned to use DNA evidence as an investigative tool. He knew this could be the key to unlocking the case. Authorities were able to extract Mandy's and another person's DNA profiles from the evidence. But there was not much development after that. The investigators pursued every lead and resource. They even consulted with a task force investigating Seattle's infamous Green River serial killer case. However, because the Green River killer targeted sex workers and runaways, they were ultimately told that Mandy's case did not match the profile. And the case became cold for a while. Mandy Stavik was buried in a cemetery near her family's home. 20 years later, a man who attended the same high school as Mandy became a detective. His name was Kevin Bohe, and he did not want to give up on the case. Luckily, the sheriff of Acme, Bill Elfo, appointed Kevin to work on Mandy's case as the lead investigator in 2009. Kevin came up with the idea of doing a systematic DNA sweep of as many men as he could find living in the Acme area in 1989. However, he experienced multiple dead ends, and the case seemed to go nowhere. Still, Kevin was determined to find the killer. I thought, it's just a matter of time. We're going to ask the right person, or we're going to get the right sample of DNA. We just gotta keep plugging away, Kevin said. Sure enough, Kevin got his answer 4 years later. In June 2013, 2 mothers living near Bellingham, Washington, Heather Backstrom and Marilee Anderson, took their young children to Birch Bay water slides for fun in the sun. While the two were chatting with the other moms, talking about their families and lives in Acme, someone randomly mentioned Mandy's case. At the time, the 2 mothers were unaware of the impact this conversation would have on the decades-long case. Heather and Marilee barely knew each other then. However, their lives were connected by a common encounter. While the two conversed about Mandy's case, another name came up: Tim Bass, a man they all went to high school with. Although hesitant, Marilee said she suspected that Tim killed Mandy. To Marilee's surprise, Heather thought so too. However, these were not baseless accusations, as the two shared history with Tim. When Heather was 15, she attended a softball game in the summer of 1989, a few months before Mandy was killed. After the game, Heather and her friends decided to go to Dairy Queen, piling into a friend's truck. By pure coincidence, Heather sat next to Tim. While riding, Tim creepily talked about Heather's eyes, telling her they were beautiful. Afterward, he took a pen from a cup holder and rubbed it along Heather's exposed knees. At the time, Tim was in his mid-20s. Heather was nervous, but luckily, that was the last of their interaction. When Marilee heard about this story, she shared her experience with Tim. In the summer of 1991, Marilee was home with her young son on a quiet evening. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupted their peaceful night. As she opened the door, Tim stood before her, requesting to use the phone to call his wife. She obliged and watched as he began to dial the number, but as he spoke into the phone, Marilee sensed something was not adding up. Marilee heard beeping sounds from the phone, indicating a disconnected line. She knew Tim was calling a false number. Afterward, Tim walked through the kitchen and toward Marilee's bedroom, where he made a startling confession. He revealed that he had driven by their house before and admitted to having feelings of love for her. Tim then asked Marilee to sleep with him. Shocked and terrified, Marilee refused and demanded Tim leave. However, Tim was persistent. Only when Marilee threatened to call the police did Tim decide to leave. After the two women talked about their experiences, they decided it was time to finally speak up. Eventually, detectives Kevin Bohe and Ken Gates considered Tim as a prime suspect. Because they were well-liked in the close community, Tim and his brother and father were never asked to provide a DNA sample. For 25 years, Tim had been leading a quiet life in a nearby town, working as a delivery driver for a local bakery and raising 3 children with his wife. When Kevin and Ken visited Tim's house, they asked about Mandy Stavik. Strangely, Tim pretended not to remember Mandy. The two detectives found this weird, especially because Mandy's murder shook the small community to its core. Eventually, they asked for Tim's saliva sample. Naturally, Tim declined for fear that he might go to prison. With a prime suspect that didn't want to cooperate, the two detectives decided to be more creative. Police tailed Tim throughout his entire night shift delivering baked goods. They hoped he would throw an item containing his DNA, but it was unsuccessful. As the investigation hit another dead end, an unlikely person came to their rescue. The police called Tim's workplace and spoke to his manager, Kim Wagner. According to Kim, Tim was weird and never called her by name. He always seemed like he had a low regard for women. Eventually, as she spoke to the two detectives, Kim realized they were after Tim for the murder of Mandy. She offered to get them Tim's DNA. Kim secretly monitored Tim's movement day after day, carefully watching if he would throw away anything. After 3 grueling months, Kim finally hit the jackpot: a plastic cup and a Coke can with Tim's saliva. She immediately grabbed the items and gave them to the investigators. When the results came back from the state crime lab, the DNA found inside Mandy's body matched Tim's saliva. 50-year-old Tim Bass was arrested in the bakery parking lot for kidnapping, raping, and murdering Mandy Stavik. Although this was great news for Mandy's family and friends, proving Tim guilty in court was the next challenge. Tim then confessed something shocking. He claimed he slept with Mandy. Prosecutor Dave McEachern was 44 at the time of Mandy's death. When he heard that they arrested Tim, he came out of retirement and insisted on leading the prosecution team pro bono. For Dave, this was personal. "She was such a good kid, it just shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened at all," said Dave. Tim's DNA was found in Mandy, but according to his lawyer, evidence of sexual contact was not evidence of rape. Tim confessed in his interrogation that he was having a secret affair with Mandy. Additionally, Tim didn't have the burden of proof. Thus, he didn't have to prove to the court he had communication with Mandy. When everything seemed to be tipping in Tim's favor, his family began to speak up. According to Tim's brother, Tom, Tim had a nasty breakup when he was young and intended to kill himself with a gun. After that event, everyone around Tim noticed a drastic change in his attitude toward women. Additionally, when Tim was under investigation, Tom was asked to fabricate a story and tell the police that he too had slept with Mandy. Tom thought this was Tim's way of making his relationship claim with Mandy more believable. Meanwhile, Tim's wife, Gina Malone, stated that Tim was very controlling and abusive throughout their relationship. In fact, Gina left him before once and filed a restraining order against Tim. She also began with divorce proceedings. However, Tim threatened to take away the kids, prompting Gina to stay. Gina also mentioned that she heard Tim's conversation with his mother about putting the blame for Mandy's murder on his deceased father. However, the defense attorneys had good explanations for Tim's behavior, citing that even innocent people could act guilty under the immense weight of suspicion. Eventually, the 9-day trial was wrapped up. Mandy's family and the Acme community prayed while waiting for the verdict. The deliberations lasted over a day. The judge announced that Tim Bass was guilty of kidnapping, raping, and murdering Mandy Stavik. Even though authorities never found out exactly what happened, they collected enough evidence to convict Tim and sentenced him to 27 years of imprisonment. Although it took 30 years, Mandy's case was finally closed thanks to the efforts of the Acme community. If you found this video interesting, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. This way, you won't miss any of our content.